Hello, welcome to UK Election Analysis. Today we're going abroad and looking at the French presidential election. I have to apologise if I sound like a prick when I'm pronouncing the French names of places. Pronouncing French names it's not my strong spot, but I did actually take French at GCSE, although it was by far my worst subject. And je parle français très mal. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Today I'm going to be mainly looking at this Guardian article. It's got lots of great graphs and all that good stuff. And first we're just going to look at the results of the last election, not the last election, but the last phase that happened, I think, yesterday or the day before. And in this election, we saw that there was really three main parties doing well, which is in contrast to the last election where there was really four main parties. Those main parties were, like last time, or three candidates, I can't remember the parties. Macron from En Marche, Le Pen from National Rally, and Mélenchon, who I'm pretty sure is a left-wing independent. Last time, Les Républicains, who's their centre-right party, as we can see here, got about 20%. They all got about 20%, as we can see here. But this time, it's different. It's more like three main parties. And it was a lot closer between Mélenchon and Le Pen than was predicted. I'm not an expert in French elections, and I wasn't really following it that well. So I apologise if anyone is watching this from France. But I don't believe that Mélenchon was taken anywhere near as serious to be put through the second round as Le Pen or Macron. And perhaps if he was, there would have been more support put behind him to get. And it was quite close, 1.2% between Le Pen and Mélenchon. And it's definitely likely that he could have got into that second place and got into the runoff. Whether he could have beat Macron is another story, but we'll see. Zemmour and Pécresse really underperformed how they were expected to. Zemmour, I'm pretty sure, was traditionally had a lot of scandals attached to him, but I think with Russia and how he wasn't particularly critical of Putin, that really suffered. And he's even to the right of Le Pen, who's herself quite far right, and I suspect was squeezed by her. Pécresse, again, I think, struggling to find her place. Macron moved from the centre to the centre right, and Le Pen moderating a little bit means that Les Républicains, who's in between the two parties, was really squeezed and couldn't really find their place and lost votes probably to either side, mainly Macron. So France isn't like the UK, is in parties emerge quite quickly. En Marche, I'm pretty sure, emerged to prominence in the 2017 French election, and Le Pen's National Rally party emerged to prominence at the same sort of time, although it did exist before as the National Front party, and her father contested an election in 2002, getting in second place, but was completely defeated by a centre-right conservative sort of figure, a bit like Macron, although perhaps a bit further right than him. But in the UK, I don't want to start squeezing French politics into UK politics, although this is UK election analysis. But in the UK, parties are a lot older and it's a lot harder to emerge. I suppose the quickest a party has emerged really has been UKIP, that really came to prominence in 2015 and then went away, although that only really got to 15%, and there's no chance that they could have won that election in 2015. The Conservative Party and the Labour Party are really old compared to the French parties. Conservative Party really emerged out of the Civil War, and the Labour Party emerged out of the early 20th century, but parties don't tend to just pop up and then gain prominence. For the Labour Party to sort of overtake the Liberal parties to become the main anti-conservative party, there was so much change in the country. 2 world wars occurred in that time. Also, the franchise was expanded really extremely, to include women and working class people, that really helped push Labour to gain that second place. On March, yeah, very young, I'm pretty sure that the National Rally Party is also that young, although perhaps they were more like dormant between the 2002 election and the 2017 election. Although in the last election it was quite clear that Macron was the centrist candidate and Le Pen the far right, there has been drifts in the parties. They broadly take those positions, but I think that really what we've seen is on March, perhaps responding to the fact that there are rises in those right parties and those far right parties, and they've drifted towards the right a little bit, taking up some more strong positions on migration and high defence spending, although that's of course to do with Russia as well. And Le Pen has perhaps, you could say, moderated, but also just focused a bit less on immigration and focused more on the economy and the economic side. And I wouldn't say Le Pen is a particularly generous fiscally, although she's more concentrating on what she's called nationals and giving nationals more. And I think by nationals she means people who were citizens of France and are French, which is probably plays into a bit of that nationalist view she has. Well, we also see a lot is Russia being talked about a lot more in the election, obviously because of what's happening in Ukraine. And traditionally Macron did really well out of this. He got this reputation for being pro-EU. He had a good dialogue with Putin, but definitely not seen as a friend, and a strong military position, which he's strengthened further. Le Pen was perhaps weakened by this position, by what was happening in Ukraine, because she traditionally had some links to Putin, although she has sort of cut those links quite a bit. If we just look at the map, we can see that Le Pen generally does all right across the country, apart from in this northeast area and in the south. Mélenchon only did better than the other two parties in the less affluent parts of Paris. And also a bit in the south as well. He managed to do all right in the south. And Zemmour also did all right in the south. And Macron did very well in the west. If you are French and you want to just perhaps type in the comments or email me, because I don't understand France and I don't understand French geography and how that affects politics. I'm very interested, quite informed about how that impacts it in the UK. But it just seems to me that there's a lot of more support in the west of France, in this sort of peninsula. Is it Brittany and Normandy for Macron, but less support for the further right parties, and also some more support for Mélenchon as well. So I don't know if there's some split that means that's more progressive, I don't know, perhaps more affluent area, I'm not sure. But if we're going to look at the second round, this time I reckon it'll be a lot closer than it was last time. Last time Macron got about 2/3 of the vote and Le Pen got about half that, with about 1/3 of the vote. But if we look at the parties now, I'm going to go through them and see how I reckon they'll split. So this one, Arthund, sorry about the pronunciation, anti-capitalist candidate, only 0.6%, so not a huge significant percentage of the vote, but you can also put it with this other one. It's another anti-capitalist party. I reckon a lot of those would abstain in the next round, but I'd say more would probably go to Le Pen, because Macron is the president, and a lot of parties probably position themselves as anti-Macron parties, like Le Pen. So perhaps they can Le Pen can win into that anti-Macron rhetoric and win some more of those votes. If we look at the last election, if we get down. Right, we can see that although Macron won very left-wing parties and very left-wing party votes, it was less so than that he won centrist votes. Le Pen still made a bit of headway in those very left-wing. A lot did abstain, of course, but I think we could see of these parties here, we could see, I reckon, more going to Le Pen. I don't really see them going to Macron. Le Pen could be seen as more fiscally generous to what I've called nationals before, and arguing that perhaps social welfare should go more to nationals than foreigners, and that might play in all right with these anti-capitalists, although if they're quite progressive they might not like that rhetoric. Most will abstain. I reckon some will go to Le Pen. Hidalgo, if that's right, sorry, the Socialist Party candidate, most will abstain, definitely. Most will abstain. Some, I reckon, could break either way. I'd say probably slightly more for Macron. Right-wing Eurosceptic, obviously, for Le Pen, will break. Communist, I reckon that will go more for Le Pen. Most will abstain, but I reckon more for Le Pen, purely because she did well in those traditional rural working class areas in the northeast of France, and where the Communist Party did well. Lassalle, centrist, will go to Macron. Jarot, Green, I reckon because it's more urban-y. Most will abstain, but I reckon Macron will win them. Patrice, centre-right, probably Macron. Zemmour, definitely Le Pen. I reckon Le Pen, because Patrice has moved more to the right and Le Pen perhaps moderated a bit, could get a somewhat significant portion of that Patrice vote, but I reckon vast majority will go to Le Pen, and Zemmour, definitely Le Pen. Sorry, vast majority Patrice vote to Macron. So I reckon out of all these parties, excluding Mélenchon, I reckon it will be almost even between the two. Perhaps Le Pen will do slightly better just because that Zemmour vote will probably go right behind her. So then it really does come down to how the split on the Mélenchon front will go. If we look at the last election, the first round, compared to the second round, the Républicain, the centre-right party, and Mélenchon, the left-wing candidate, definitely both their votes went straight to Macron, and Le Pen didn't really get seen then. But there is a lot less goodwill going around for Macron. He's not a new candidate, he's a tarnished candidate, and he could definitely look to lose some of those votes on the left to Le Pen. If Le Pen takes a look at the fiscal approach rather than immigration, she could definitely look to take a lot of those rural. In the south, the Mélenchon did well, and they could take some of those votes in those rural, less affluent areas. Rural, less affluent Mélenchon voters, I reckon, will definitely break for Le Pen. Most will, though, probably go to Macron. No, most will probably abstain, but most in other parts of the country, that west part I was talking about, which seems to be more progressive than other parts of the country, will probably go to Macron. But one group that definitely will not go to Le Pen is that the support that Mélenchon's got from non-white voters. Particularly, there's a significant Muslim population in France, and some of the policies that Le Pen has come out with is extremely sort of anti-Muslim rhetoric, and that's definitely going to scare Muslim voters, probably to vote definitely more for Macron, although they might abstain because these are also less affluent voters in the French suburbs, so they might be less inclined to vote for Macron, who they might blame for cost of living's going up. So it really just depends on how Macron and Le Pen, how Mélenchon voters break in terms of Macron and Le Pen. Most will probably abstain, but if we just look at some of these policies and see which ones would appeal more to Mélenchon voters, hardly any. Obviously, if they voted for Macron in this round, they're probably going to vote for Macron in the next round, and the same for Le Pen. But crime and justice, it seems that generally Macron's going along the line of hiring more law enforcement to increase safety, although it's very hard for Macron to do. if you want change, vote Macron, because Macron's been in power and he's also got that establishment feel to him. Le Pen removed the possibility of sentence reduction. Climate. So this is perhaps where Le Pen is moderated a bit, because she's not really focusing on fossil fuels. She is still wanting to invest in hydrogen power, which is a green source. But she's obviously less keen for climate action because she is on the far right. But she is probably moderating that down a bit, perhaps to win over Mélenchon voters. Macron introduced carbon tax. Although when Macron, with his policies, an easy line is, well, why haven't you done that? Because they're doing well in the parliament at the moment, although there is a parliamentary election coming up. They can say, why haven't you done all this stuff then, if you want to do it? Both want to tighten up border security. Probably Le Pen more. I don't really know what she means by re-evaluate teacher salary grid. Introduce uniforms for primary and secondary schools like we have in the UK. In France, I'm not sure if this is true, but I was always told in primary school that they call their teachers by their first names, and that's crazy to me. It's obviously a lot less formal there. Farming, reduce taxes, remove taxes, that's both more fiscally conservative perhaps. This is interesting because Le Pen wants to reduce the retirement age and Macron wants to increase it. I suppose that's because he's a fiscal conservative. But yeah, both want to reduce inheritance tax. And yeah, so final prediction I would say is that it will be very close. Although I would say Macron has the slight advantage in this, although it really just depends on how Mélenchon voters break down. Anyway, I'm thinking about doing a part 2, probably after the results of the second round, and then looking at the parliamentary elections. But I hope you've liked this because it is my first look outside of the UK. Thanks for watching. Please like or dislike if you didn't like this video, and subscribe, and I'll see you next video.